pictures to help them see that analogy. If they write some descriptions of this and what the point is that they're supporting, that's similar to providing a quote and why it supports their conclusion. Does that make sense?
As long as everyone in the picture has all of their quotes.
Yes, that is a requirement.
Go ahead. Google.
Don't
Keith?
Google.
Not heroes.
Just
So-
keep moving on.
Just compiling a list of
That was
things
his
to
cue.
Google later.
That's why that town is all blown up, is that you can
How about some other things? Did you, yes,
My classes, I don't have textbooks for my courses,
I wondered about
so
that.
notes are so critical.
yes.
And so, and most of my readings, I feel like an online article, an online essay.
Okay,
They're pretty short readings, but I printed one out this morning and I just went through and I started circling. I couldn't do it in 3, but the 4 most important words in a sentence.
yeah,
And then when I was done with the paragraph, I went back through and just read them off and it was great notes. So that would be a great way of going about that. I like that.
okay, that's very encouraging.
Sentences
Glad-
with more than 4
Yep.
words.
You,
I got caught on the pictures though.
do they ever have to read very technical things like rules of architectural? I don't even know exactly.
Some
what it
classes
is.
on
I just want-
occasion, yeah, some will get, the codes, for example, are very,
Yeah, that's what I was.
very
just
legal.
dense and
Yeah.
full of vocabulary that's probably foreign.
But I tried to kind of water it down first with,
Okay.
in the lecture.
Okay, yeah. Well, thank you. So, okay, you tried keyword outlining with 4 words. Okay. Anybody else? Or if you got stumped, I hope you don't hesitate to talk about it.
The
Yes.
thing that it goes along too with what Dan said earlier in our social studies textbooks,
Yes.
is that we have a lot of different images and little boxes that are colored or maps or things
Yep,
that the kids just skip.
yep,
That's not, oh, you assigned this section to read. Well, I
yep,
don't have to look at that stuff.
yep.
When, if they would actually take the extra, seriously, 5 to 7 minutes
Yeah,
to read it,
yeah,
their understanding and comprehension of what that section was about would be so much deeper.
mhm,
And so there's a lot of times that I know, when I look at, and the textbook I brought today was a new textbook for my AP class, which is new. And there's not as much of that, there's more just dense text.
mhm,
But there are these little sections that I know the kids that when I assign this summer reading, that are gonna skip this.
mhm.
That if they would read this, and it's just a little primary source piece that would like put a story to the technical information that they're getting.
Mhm.
So to help tie that dense technical knowledge to something that would be easier for them to remember, so that when they do have to write, which is the big goal in this,
Yeah.
they could pull those, oh, that was about
Yes.
clothing, and the clothing, why was that important?
Yep.
And go back and
So
tie that
even
stuff
for the
together.
first couple times that you have those, which would probably be the first couple days,
Yeah,
you could do something like beforehand, find the paragraph that is referring most specifically to that chart.
right,
Have them go through, find the most, or the repeated words in that, and talk about them, use those 4 words or those 5 words to talk about this graph. They have to actually talk about it in class and then write it down.
right,
Or you could have them, just like I did for reading the visualization text out loud, and I said, how would I point to this when talking about it? Same thing, require them to point to parts of that while you're reading it out loud, and then write that down as,
right, okay.
that kind of thing. If you did that throughout the first chapter with basically every single one, they'd probably get the point that it's worth looking at these,
Right.
and it helps my understanding.
Yeah,
One thing that I've noticed in my class is kind of the opposite. Like if I assign a reading as a science book, they've got pictures, they just look at the pictures and not
Okay.
the text so much. Or, science books tend to, I know it's not just a science book thing, tend to highlight like important words and stuff like that. Or, pull out definitions on the side.
Yep.
So it's kind of already done some of the work for them and they take advantage of that.
Yeah.
and without really reading the full context of whatever they're talking about. So that's been a challenge for me, is to try to, help them read the entire text. And so like, sometimes my response has been to like, pick out like the stupidest little detail from the middle of a paragraph and like, focus it on that, even though it's not really important, but then like, it pushes them to be like, oh, well, I better read the whole thing, I don't know, just a thought on that. But I did think that like, there's so many processes in science that, and I'm sure that all of us at some point like put up like diagrams or pictures of processes or like the results of processes. Like I was thinking of geologic formations,
Yep.
canyons and things like that. And so I would put that up and be like, well, this is what's happening here. And not, like, I never really thought about it before, to say like, well, what do you guys think is happening here? Just flip that around on
Yes,
them.
let them discover.
Yeah, and maybe, put up a series of those, and be like, well, what makes sense? And just kind of flip that around on that. But like, any, suggestions on that first, like, they skim because they've been taught to
Right,
in some capacities,
yes.
and then they only look at the pictures.
So doing keyword outlining could be useful if so often this year I've tutored a few kids not from this school in
Mhm.
science, and in one of the science textbooks, almost all of the text is tremendously boring description
Yes.
of the picture. And if they just study the picture, they actually don't
Right.
have to read the rest of the text.
Right.
But there are some occasional key concepts in the text. So it would depend on your motivation, your goal. Do you want them to read all the text if it is only a description of the picture? Or do you want them to understand the picture? In that, they could do something like, you could model this as a class first verbally, but then have them do it in a written way. And this could apply to other subjects too. Use the picture to try and predict what's going to be said, and then use the text to confirm whether or not they're correct.
Right.
And if they've had to write it down first, lots of kids like to know whether or not they're right.
Right.
So that can help if you push that a little bit. But also even just having them find the repeated words in the text in order to use those to describe the picture
Right.
can help. So kind of these.
Part of I don't know if it's a problem is the right word, but part of the reason that strategy works for them is
Yes.
because the way that my class is structured, most of what they're learning, we cover in class as well.
Yes.
So like, it's kind of like they figured out like, well, if I don't read it, doesn't necessarily mean that I'm not gonna understand it, or we've already talked,
Yes.
the problem comes in then that like, my text isn't, I think, written, I don't know, it's not super technical, it's also not super engaging.
Yeah.
But the problem comes in then when they get into like, couple years down the road, like biology, where they've developed this habit of like, okay, in science class, we just need to skim, and now all of a sudden it's like, no, that doesn't really work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because now you've got a lot more technical and you've got to like dig into it, and so,
So they have to have
Yeah.
practice leading up to reading that kind of expository text in order to get to the skills later.
right, it's a huge learning curve,
Yes.
yeah. Just a thought.
Very poorly written.
Yes, and this one that I've used this year is so poorly written, it's painful. But
Right.
they're not all like that. I'm gonna think more, there's actually some things that we didn't talk about today that I can talk about
Okay.
with you that are other examples. But also, just based on the things we talked about today, sort of, if they didn't have the text in front of them, or they had their textbook closed, could you read aloud a part of it to them, and then have them open up and figure out which diagram you just
Maybe, yeah.
described, like if it
Yeah.
matches to a picture? So they're having to form the picture in their mind,
Right.
and then confirm it with what's in the book and compare. But I'll think more.
Okay,
I wrote it down.
Right.
thank you.
Yes.
Well, like I'm looking at these pictures in here, and this is,
Yeah.
some of it's actually pretty well written.
Okay, yeah,
I quit giving them notes
okay,
because they were avoiding doing any of the reading and missing parts when they
Yes.
did it.
yeah,
And so what it used to do is have them read, then do a demonstration. So I'll do a demonstration, I'm gonna do an activity with this. And then they're gonna have to read to try to understand what I'm demonstrating, given these 3 pages of response right there.
Okay,
And then have to group and bring them back and say, okay, what did I just show you? What phenomenon is going on here? And then if I can get them to the next level, is illustrations are always tough, they're always deficient in some things, see if they can say what's missing,
Yes.
what's it not showing.
add to the illustration. Yeah, that would be beautiful. And again, just, I'm feeling like a broken record because we only talked about these limited number of things today, but similarly, if they find the repeated words and use those to describe the text, the pictures, or with you, your knowledge of the macro structure might help them to take notes in it. Like if yours is cause and effect, or,
It is, they have to take this macro structure and try to explain it in terms of literally atomic level microstructure.
so, okay,
So then they need the text to help them do that.
Yes.
Because you can't see what's going on.
right,
So then they have to start reading
Yes.
on text to fill in the gaps of what they can't see.
and if they don't already naturally do it, you could have them search for the connector words like as a result, so, because, therefore, for those cause and effect, or add those to their own writing, their own description. Does that make sense? Yep, okay. Kathy?
I know what you said about avoiding taking notes from a lecture or spoken word, but what if we use this repetition concept and said, just write down what we repeat 3 or 4 times, and then at the end of class, leave 5 minutes to write up a little summary of what happened
I've done that exact thing lots of times. That's a great transition.
successfully?
Yes, successfully. Well, I guess I haven't done that exact thing lots of times. I've done that sometimes, but what I've done more often is have them recall after a verbal time of me talking, recall words that, I was actually gonna do this today, I'll probably skip it, but have them recall words that came up a lot today. And
then
then
maybe
write a
ask
what I
questions
learned
about them.
paragraph on what happened in class today, where 8 of those 10 words have to be used, plus the connectors, therefore, and as a result are used. Does that make sense?
Or could they also write questions if they didn't
Yeah.
get it?
Oh, the questions to help their own understanding? Yes. Yes.
Or maybe
Any
someone
kind
has
of, anything that,
you know,
this
keep
is
in
all
mind.
really about thinking. So I haven't emphasized that as much as I plan to today, but all of this is about thinking. So the thinking, if the thinking skills are in place, they'll be able to apply them when they read text, if they can get the words off the page. And if the thinking skills are in place, they'll be able to compose in order to write. Yes.
I just did a quick search and found there's a website called Word Counter. And you can put any text in there and it'll give you the list of the most common words and how many times they're used.
Awesome.
So if you have a digital copy of the text that you're using, it'd be a great way to go in there and kind of be prepared in that regard to know what the word counts are.
Thanks. That's awesome.
And all this time I thought he was looking at eBay.
Wordcounter.com, is that?
Yes.
I thought I was Googling Bob's.
Lord, let this day bring you great glory. Amen. All right, well, why don't I give you some time with your department people? Though, warning type thing that I was going to say before is that, so for example, starting with keyword outlining and having students memorize a small amount of something as their motivation for checking to see if they have chosen good words or not to help them remember. If 5 freshman teachers all choose to use that at the beginning of the year and the students have to memorize 5 different things in the first 3 weeks of school, it's not going to be as effective as if they had to do one for 3 weeks and then another one for 3 weeks and another one for 3 weeks. So coordinating when we're kind of talking about these more limited number of specific skills is important. So first within a department, but then we can do later on meetings where you talk about what you're planning to do with your own freshmen versus everybody else who is freshmen. All right, so